I had a conversation with a very well-known, I won't name him, Advaita Guru, who's teaching Advaita. And he said, I do not want to, I recognize the need for identity in the outer Lokic world, the social world. But my students and me are on a path where we are only pursuing the inner world, and we don't need to pursue that world. So I had the following conversation, which I want to just relate to you, and then I'll give you the mine. Just let me finish that, yeah. I'll relate this conversation, this quick one. So I said, Swamiji, do you agree that less than 1% of your disciples will get moksha in this life? He said, not even 1%, maybe not even 0.1%. So we agreed. So I said, therefore 99.9% will be born again, reborn. Do you agree with that? He said, yes. So I said, if 0.1% you're teaching moksha and avoid the Lokic world, they get moksha, they're gone, they're very happy, they're transcended. But 99.9% who ignored this advice, and therefore they ignore the Lokic world, and therefore they let the Lokic world be taken over by whatever asuric forces take it over. They may become a world of radicalized people who don't let you practice the Dharma anymore. Then the 99.9% will be reborn in a future life as one of those fundamentalist people. So let's say in your life, I said, Swami, do you feel that you are achieving moksha? He said, no, I'm not at moksha yet. So I said, therefore there's a 99.9% chance that you will come back. He said, yes. I said, and therefore there's a very high chance that when you come back, by then there may be no Hindus left, and you will have been born in a world where the Leela will be entirely antagonistic to pursuing your Dharma. You may not even be allowed to do all these things. So therefore, what you are optimizing short term for a very tiny number of people is sub-optimizing long term for the mass majority of people. And he had no answer to that.
I want to make a point on what Kalyan said. You talked about Artha, Kam, Moksha, and Dharma. But we were more specific on Dharma. But as a very, as an individual, I'll not talk as a group. I don't want to talk as a group because I want to get an answer for myself. I'm very specific. So, in very simple words, being in simple language for a normal human being, just to understand, if we have to work in a group, first we have to understand what we want or what an individual wants. Now my question is, where do I find the answers for things like when, the actual questions on the panel right now, when people pinpoint at us and say, oh, you're an American Indian. Okay, that is a question. How do I answer them? Even to form a community and work with Dharma with us in hand, I should have an answer to, stand in front of them and say, this is not American Indian. I'm an Indian, Indo-American, or Indian who is in America. That's what we have to understand very specifically. So these very small points where we actually miss out, those are the ones that affect the youth. Being a youth, I think that's where the important point is. So forming a group of Dharma and working towards it and getting moksha later is later stage. First give us the arth and then tell us what it is around. Then only we can go and make a community and work together. I think that has to be the discussion. And
Good. Yes, please.
I'm sorry, what was your name? Shweta. I just wanted to add one thing to Shweta, is that I think she brings up a really good point, because I don't know about you, but I was born and raised here, so my parents are from India, but their whole life was spent building a life so that I wouldn't have to struggle as hard as they did. So their in-depth knowledge about Hinduism and their background and their culture is not that strong. And while we have a ton of learned people here, think about it realistically. How many people do you interact with on a day-to-day basis who can tell you what's written in the Veda, or who can read Sanskrit or anything, right? So my question is, she has a very good point, is that when we go out there, we can attend these conferences till we're 72, but that doesn't mean anything to us. We need to be able to learn it from a younger age and be able to interact with people like you and Abhinavji and everyone who knows stuff and have an easier source to get that from. I think that's what she's trying to say, and I think that's a very good point.
Yes.
To be very frank, I've not gone and brought up in America. I'm Indian born and just 2 years old to America. So,
Yeah.
I mean, finding seeing 2 years of life here itself and, facing problems with all this kind, being an Indian, my Indian friends itself, at wherever I go, I have, pinpointed, like, I have been, asked questions, why are you still like this, though? Why don't you just get water? I said, no, that's my identity, I just want to be like that. And that was not, Americans who are, Indian Americans who are here. They're the people who have come with me from India to be here and to pursue their career. They have pinpointed on that.
So this
that
is,
most important,
we are at
being Indian.
we're at the half point, although we started a little late in the 2-hour session, we are half point. I'd like to move to the second type of issue, which has to do with, if you assume that there is need for an identity, okay, if you assume there is need for an identity, which I do, and I hope we've made a case that there is need for an identity, that we can have this adhyatmic life and moksha dharma, which says you deconstruct all your identity, but there is also the earth, calm, and worldly life and the leela role which we have been asked to play, in which we do need identities because that's the nature of the environment. So if you can buy that for the next hour with me, just please assume that we've made a good case that we need identity because of the circumstances, and for the next hour we're not going to say, well, but why do I need an identity at all? Let's say we've resolved that issue, okay? Because if we have resolved it, and you can take that one message out of this panel into the future, let me tell you, for a lot of you, it's a very major breakthrough. Never come back to this business about I don't need an identity and why do you need? Hinduism doesn't tell you you don't need an identity. Even though for moksha you're deconstructing all your identity, Hinduism tells you that in the leela you have to play a role. So as long as we can have a tentative agreement that we will, for the next hour, talk about identity as a positive thing, now we can move to another topic, which is, well, what is this Hindu identity? Now that we have said we do need one, because the problem of defining a Hindu identity has always been subverted by the position that says we don't even need one. So why are you asking a question? Okay, so now that we say we need one, and there is a positive role for it, and he showed there is a positive role, and Kundan said, and you also said, there is a reason for this identity. So now we can move on to describing, well, what is this identity, and how do we handle those who do not subscribe to this identity by their choice, because they have created an identity for themselves which is very exclusive, which has boundaries, which excludes us. We may be heathen or kafir or whatever, and so by their definition, if we are the outsiders, how do we then deal with them in a very dharmic manner, consistent with our dharma, which respects all of them? How do we deal with them, even though they don't deal with us with the same respect? How do we give respect to those who do not respect us? Those kinds of issues, that would be the third part. So first part was the need for an identity is real. That was the first part. Second part is, well, what is this identity? Okay? And then the third part will be, how do we, from this identity, deal with those identities that do not give us this respect, and we still want to respect them. So that's the three-part, how I would like to structure this. So let's go on to the second part, which is to define what is meant by a Hindu identity. And we're not going to consider anybody who says, I don't even have one because I'm the supreme being and all that kind of stuff. We do have an identity, we do need one, and we're going to now try to define what it is.